Hello, welcome to Fintech Impact. I'm your host, Jason Pereira. Today on the show, I have Heinrich Zetlmayer, CEO of Blockchain Valley Ventures. Blockchain Valley Ventures is a Swiss-based venture capital firm specifically targeting blockchain investments. Big surprise based on the name, of course. And with that, here's my interview with Heinrich. Hello, Heinrich.
Hi, Jason.
So thanks for taking the time today.
Yeah, and thank you to be on your podcast.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. So Heinrich Zetlmayer, CEO of Blockchain Valley Ventures. Tell us about Blockchain Valley Ventures.
Yeah, Blockchain Valley Ventures is a venture firm, a new venture firm. We were founded at the beginning of 2018. We're fully dedicated to the impact of blockchain technology and the blockchain innovation. The reason why we are fully dedicated is because it's such a fundamental innovation and it's so complex in itself as it combines legal, technology, business innovation, that we believe you really need to focus fully on it to get a good grasp of it. And especially if you want to make investment decisions, you truly should understand what you're doing.
In theory, right? That should be the way, right?
Yeah.
Not always, but sometimes. Yeah.
It's called venture capital, so there's always risk because you invest early on. And when you invest early on at the beginning of a journey, you don't know everything. You make your hypothesis, you do due diligence as good as you can. But of course, there are always surprises on the way, and they're good and bad ones. But at the end, there is also the return for it.
Oh, that's the hope. So tell me about the genesis of this. So what led to the formation of Blockchain Valley Ventures?
It's a little bit a personal story also. When I left IBM in the year 2008, I went straight into venture capital. And I started a bit as an operating partner, did turnarounds of portfolio companies in the digital sector, and then took over actually nearly by accident as co-CEO of ESL, an esports company that I brought then to exit and a very nice valuation. I'm actually still involved in it as a board member. And then I asked myself, what do you do next? And then I said, it's clear I go into one of the big innovations, and blockchain one of them. And I was the first investor in a crypto exchange called Lücke here in Switzerland. It's a very innovative exchange. And then together with the founder, I built the company until the end of 2017. And then me and the founder decided that we spin off actually our accelerator, where we did token offerings. And that all is 2017 in all the frenzy. And we decided also that the topic of venture capital, doing investments in the blockchain space, we needed to do outside of the exchange, because that wouldn't work inside, because we probably will be one of the first regulated exchanges now. So we needed to separate the business. So it's a spin-off basically from that exchange. And we created a venture capital unit where we have a fund now. And we have an advisory team that does token offerings. And we did the first security token offerings. And we recently added to that a corporate finance business where we do large-scale classic fundraising. And the idea of all of that is that if you want to be relevant in the blockchain space and deliver value, you cannot be just an investor. You need to add value. So you need to be able to do token offerings and understand what this is, because a blockchain business, by definition, sooner or later has also a token. And you need to be able to help the company to raise further money, not just your own, because it's just good governance, having more investors than just yourself.
Excellent. So really, it's more than just a venture capital firm. You're basically offering, what a lot of traditional venture capital firms have done, and gotten into the business consultancy side, gotten into the entire value delivery system, right? So someone comes to you with a great idea for a blockchain that's going to solve problem XYZ. You not only have the money to back that, you have the expertise to help them deploy that, to help them do their own ICOs if it comes to that, and really the entire value prop along the entire channel, right?
Yes, because at the very end, that makes us relevant to the entrepreneur and the founders, because we can help them to take care of their problems. And it's certainly there are other models where venture capitalists are more just one piece. But I think in an emerging industry, when you're in an emerging industry where things are not clear and moving, and you need to be a little bit more value adding and a bit broader to be relevant. And entrepreneurs come to us either because they want to do a token offering. In 2018, they all came to us because of token offerings.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, because a venture capitalist was a kind of dinosaur that should not be alive. Now, of course, that now entrepreneurs come to us because they want money. And that makes us relevant in many aspects.
And also, I mean, when you start dealing with the token world, the reality is that every jurisdiction kind of looks at these things differently, right? So having the knowledge of, oh, you're operating out of this country, this is how it's looked at. Maybe you want to consider issuing here or operating. Like having that kind of purview of the governance side of this has got to be incredibly valuable and cut through so much wasted time for these people too.
Yeah, this is the good thing why our pedigree is coming from Switzerland. Yeah, because
neutrality, because of neutrality.
That's reality, but I mean, it's a bit also, a lucky situation that I'm resident here in Switzerland, but Switzerland is very pragmatic law and a good law. And obviously in this crypto world is certainly one of the hotspots. And especially in terms of token offerings and now security token offerings, it's running ahead. And this is a place where we were able to do things, compared to the US, compared to the UK or other places. So there is a knowledge that has built here that is just ahead of some other markets. And also now we have the first two crypto banks, so banks that have a normal banking license but are able to, to hold your tokens in custody and do everything. And yes, this is also possible in the US in Coinbase and others, but there starts to be an ecosystem that simply facilitates blockchain business in Switzerland, and that is our pedigree. But of course, we are also in different locations of the world now, because blockchain by definition is global.
Absolutely. So talk to me about the specific use cases that have been most appealing to you in the last little while for blockchain. Because as we know, like there is a blockchain version of almost everything these days.
Yeah.
Like to the point of farcicalness. I mean, like, who was that company during the hype who basically added blockchain to their name and then saw their stock price increase exponentially? It was like, anyway, so there's all kinds of funny stories out there. But specifically, what uses are you finding to be the most appealing right now?
Very clearly, we invest in companies that either benefit from blockchain and cryptocurrencies or use it to transform business models. Yeah. Yes. And I think very clearly over 40% of the blockchain applications and blockchain companies are fintech companies, financial services. And what I think is very exciting, and these are also the investments that are running very well currently, is the infrastructure for all this crypto trading. So we have invested in a company called CoinFirm. They do anti-money laundering services. So they provide software as a service where banks, blockchain protocols can sign on to provide the anti-money laundering surveillance that you need to operate in the crypto sector. And it runs extremely well because more and more banks are getting into the sector. The blockchain protocols are using it. So that's a very attractive company. We also have invested in a company called Keyless. That's very interesting. They use blockchain technology for getting rid of all the private keys and getting rid of all the passwords. And they use cryptographic methods to do that. And with COVID-19, they became very relevant because suddenly, with all the remote working, especially the banks ran into a problem. They needed a secure way of getting into the systems. So financial sector and the infrastructure, so I always call it the puzzle pieces of that emerging infrastructure for crypto and token-based and digital-based trading. And the second sector that I think is very interesting is supply chain, because it doesn't have any regulatory hurdle. You just only use the blockchain as an immutable registry that everybody has a kind of smartly managed access to it. And one of the most interesting sectors in supply chain management is pharmaceuticals, because they have a huge counterfeit problem. On one hand, and they have some cumbersome processes. And then also with COVID-19, they need more control over global supply chains. And so we have invested in a company called VeraTrack. We're looking at two other companies, and they all develop quite nicely. And then it's really surprising how much activity is in the area of supply chain management. But supply chain management and blockchain, you have to look at it by sector, by application. So there is a cluster pharmaceutical, there is a cluster food and wine, and there is a cluster industrial and logistics. And each of them have already a different shape of size. There are some where big companies like IBM, FedEx, and Maersk are active, and there are others like in the pharmaceutical where I would claim there is still there are actually 180 companies in supply chain management and pharmaceuticals, but we start to see it's great. You start
Wait for
to
consolidation, clearly.
exactly. That's the point.
Yep.
That makes it interesting for an investor. If you somehow can spot the companies that could become the leaders, and we are at a phase of the industry where you can see, where you would say there is a two handful of companies where you clearly could see they are a bit better set up and they are more ahead than the others, and they could become the consolidators. So very interesting for us.
Yeah, and I say it's an exciting time in the blockchain sphere. I mean, and we're past the initial hype cycle of the distraction of the big Bitcoin run up and the ICO binge, and we're at where people were looking for the get rich quick schemes, and now we're actually starting to see the delivery of the promise of what blockchain can actually implement. And it's funny. I had this kind of peak and valley in my crypto conversations on this podcast. Back during the hype cycle, it was all anyone wanted to talk about, and every third person who came to me was doing that. And there was this big lull, and now I'm having these conversations about actual legitimate real life applications that are coming to fruition, and that is incredibly far more exciting to me than the hype cycle, quite honestly. So yeah, you touched a lot of different verticals there. I mean, finance is obvious. I mean, honestly, they're all a little bit obvious because of the flexibility or the way that blockchain can be applied across all of these. I mean, you talked about identity. You talked about basically what sounds like asset clearance and supply chain logistics. I mean, to anyone who's looked at logistics, this is incredibly exciting because the amount of time to reconcile all of these supply chain issues just becomes nothing compared to the current situation. So how are you finding, so these companies that you're investing in terms of finding product market fit and getting actual consumers, like how well is that going at this stage? Like, are they still kind of in the early adopter phase, or are they kind of moved to a fast follower phase? Like, how are things moving for them?
Well, we live in very difficult times, very clearly. So basically, let's say like this. I mean, the whole industry is moving out of an early stage industry. So it's moving from proof of concepts into pilot projects and rollouts. That I think is the basic scheme, because I mean, now many companies have been founded in 2017, 2018. They have developed their solutions come to market. They have found the first pilot projects now together with corporate budget cycles. They are getting basically into their first revenues. Yeah. Now, I would say there are basically three worlds, I would claim. One is the whole world of the unregulated is the wrong word, let's say of the cryptocurrencies and the utility tokens. Yeah. There we have, of course, nice trading volumes, growing trading volumes, and the real business. And you have a lot of companies making revenues, some of them extremely large already, like Coinbase and Binance, that are becoming unicorns. Then you have a kind of middle layer that makes between $1 and $20 million revenue already per year, fee revenue. And then you have a bit the companies that either struggle for survival or the newcomers. Then you have the world of the digital assets, tokenized shares, tokenized art, tokenized bonds, what have you. A market that everybody is seeing and say, that is the future, that will come. This is where banks look forward and others, but it's not yet a market. We have 47 security token exchanges worldwide, a few of them live, but all tiny volumes. It's not a market, but it will come.
Has not replaced the NYSE at any point just yet.
And these companies, of course, they struggle because this is, at the moment, we are in a market where capital has reduced by 50%. Token offerings don't yield much money for the company. So we live in a capital constraint situation. And that is a challenge for many also good startups there.
I'd say it's a challenge, but let's also look at the plus side of it. It also focuses entrepreneurs on absolute essentiality to their business, right? I just actually had a conversation about an hour ago with someone else coming on the podcast who their competitor raised 90 million when they went out for 10. And that was basically a kiss of death, because now to unlock the next level of venture funding, basically they were told to accelerate their timelines in a business that was not going to grow like a hockey stick. And they blew up before they could get to the second round of funding. So it's being resource constrained can create innovation in itself and focuses people. So bad and good is all I'll say.
Yeah, I very sympathize with what you said because I made the same experiences. It is sometimes unhealthy if you get too much money too early. I mean, you need to get enough money to make a breakthrough, but it's sometimes, and I speak with blockchain companies, they have done ICOs where they raised 50 million, 100 million, but now the first time they need to raise money that they did raise just through an ICO on retail, but now they need to convince institutional investors, and they find it very hard. Plus, they have valuations that are out of the sky.
Yep.
And so there are a lot of moment of truth that comes a little bit earlier than they wanted. Yeah. So that's the story. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, it's known paradigm in the VC world. Too much money can be as bad as too little.
Yeah. And then you have this third sector of companies after, cryptocurrency trading, digital assets, which is blockchain for process improvement, like supply chain management. And we have invested in a company that disrupts the whole opinion research market. Yeah. Oh. And so there are a lot of course, these blockchain users that are not necessarily fintech industry. And there we have to be clear, we are a bit in a depression situation where corporates are cutting costs and are very careful going forward with any project or even also not going forward. So companies try to hold through, and their whole ambitions have slowed down a bit. But it will increase again. I mean, it's clear. A medicament will be found. A vaccine will be found. Yep. And certainly 2021, the whole industry mood, commercial mood will improve. So it's a question of holding through, using the time well, make sure you have enough resources. But there are a lot of interesting business out there. And the good ones are nearly easier to find.
Yeah. I mean, the analogy I always use is the entire .com bubble leading into the tech world. Everybody got so distracted by internet companies in the .com bubble that we're going to take over everything from online book delivery to pet food delivery. Money was thrown at that. A bunch of them exploded. It didn't invalidate the underlying value proposition of the entire sector, but it made those companies now focus. Basically, it culled a lot of the weaker ones, created an atmosphere for the ones who survived to thrive. And now I like to say that blockchain's kind of in the early 2000s, right? If the .com bubble was 99, 2000, we're looking at the early 2000s. A lot of the nonsense has been purged. Stronger cases are starting to emerge. Newer technologies are starting to emerge. A lot of the ones that actually did not succeed previously, those ideas might still be valid, but they'll probably, if they are valid, they'll come back shortly and someone will do it better, having not been part of the hype cycle. So I think it's hard to, I've said before, it's hard to it's hard to underestimate just the impact that blockchain is going to have on everyday life behind the scenes. I have a hard time understanding how almost every core asset process and financial transaction isn't going to somehow touch a blockchain at some point in the near future.
Yeah, very, very clearly. I mean, and that's also what excites me personally. But just imagine there is every week now you have news from central banks, including especially also in the US, wanting to create first a digital dollar, a digital euro. And when this is coming, that will fulfill the original promise also of Bitcoin and of Libra of facilitating all these payment processes. And that will be a driver of a lot of efficiency improvement in all our daily life, whatever touches basically payments.
And tax revenue collection, but
yeah,
so that's a point altogether.
Here we go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Also that. And so very clearly, we will just afterwards, we will look at it and say, oh yeah, when did that come? But, because I mean, in Facebook with Libra, suddenly we have a Facebook app already, then there will be the Facebook wallet coming to that very smoothly. Suddenly you will be able to make your payment with the Facebook Libra currency. You will wonder, why didn't this come earlier? Same with Amazon, same with Google Pay, same with Apple. All this is happening.
I'm one to believe that Libra would see more success a lot faster if it wasn't for the fact it was Facebook backing it. But that's just that's not only me.
Now, that is very clear. I mean, the central banks have realized that if somebody who has over 1 billion users comes and creates a kind of internal currency between these billion users, that this is a new world currency, just by definition. And when they realized that, they, of course, came with the whole armada. I mean, there was a moment last year, August, the amount of American officials being in Switzerland to understand what Libra was doing was amazing.
Well, it's interesting because your previous career path with the e-gaming side, honestly, I think there was a lot of learnings in digital currencies from e-gaming in itself, right? Like there's entire podcasts and books dedicated to massive deflationary pressures seen in things like Diablo 3 just by mismanagement of central running of currencies that are actually interesting economic case studies. So it's kind of an interesting, e-gaming actually does have an interesting parlay into your current situation.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be aware, every second person nowadays in the world is gaming, is playing some game from kid to 18-year-old and later. And all of them understand virtual items and virtual currency, and be it the currency tomatoes, gold, digital gold, or whatever it is. So everybody grows up also with knowing I have my little account where I have my digital gold and I need to spend it. And so the topic then of a digital currency is just very easy to understand.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's the evolution of our concept of wealth in general. I mean, like there are people who still can't abstract wealth away from gold or from hard physical currency, right? But in reality, you look at most Western societies, if not most global societies, and we all got used to online banking. And then we got used to native online, and then we're starting to get used to neobanks. And we're getting used to touchless transactions where I rarely have hard currency in my wallet. Almost everything I transact is online. I don't even pull out my credit card anymore because it's a tap on my watch most of the time. So people like me are getting further and further away from the concept of wealth as being anything other than a ledger that's basically recorded somewhere, and there's never a physical manifestation of that. And you're right. Like I think the gaming side, especially with younger kids, they've learned that value is not in a physical object. It can be abstracted. And I think that's only something that's just for the sake of convenience. That is something that's only going to continue to grow around the world.
Yes, I mean, definitely. And then there's an interesting phenomenon. We're working with a company called CoinSource. In the US, they're one of the leaders for crypto ATMs. And this business is developing very, very well. So a lot of people simply put their cash through these ATMs in cryptos. And it's counterintuitive because you say, hey, I mean, ATMs is an old style business. But interestingly enough, these old style channels like ATMs, credit, facilitate also very much the adoption of cryptos because they are an access point that we all know, that we feel into that world. And we see it with Bitcoin currently. A lot of people put their cash into Bitcoin because they believe it's something like gold, and it probably is, that somehow keeps the value better than an inflating currency. And so it's very interesting currently. And then you have, on the other hand, especially here in the European countries, this pressure not to use cash anymore due to COVID-19.
Yep. So, we're seeing it everywhere here too. And I'm in Canada. Although I just came back from a bakery, it still says cash only. So what are you going to do?
So it's very clear that we're moving in that world. And this is, for me, of course, as an investor, an opportunity to spot that companies that early on are part of this puzzle. That's our quest.
Good. An epic one at that, and a well-timed one, because, I mean, the reality is that I honestly think some of the next largest companies in the world and most value producing companies in the world will be heavily blockchain based. I think Andreessen Horowitz in particular, I think it was, that basically made a big shift towards specifically targeting nothing but, not quite nothing but the majority of their targets now are specifically in this space because they know they recognize it as the revolutionary technology that it is. And it's akin to being able to invest in the internet back in its infancy stage. So I totally get the appeal of it. I think the thing that makes it unique, though, is the entire token speculation piece of it, right? It's the entire concept of it as a currency alternative or a currency in itself is something unique to any investment opportunity that's existed before. And I think that's one thing with a lot of people struggle with because they just see the speculation on the price of Bitcoin, which people think is far too volatile for investment, which is interesting because I live in Canada. And when people say it's too volatile to invest in, I'm like, I'm pretty sure our currency went from 60 to 100 to $1.10 to back to 60 again. So I don't know about you, but I don't think our currency is that volatile, is that stable compared to Bitcoin in some cases.
No, this is look. I mean, the reality is, I think one of the Federal Reserve bankers once pointed out to me that the US dollar yen currency pair is quite volatile. I think it's up to 20% volatile. So
Yep.
Bitcoin is not more volatile than 20%. It's actually less, and surprisingly less over now a period of months. But again, let's be clear. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, a true cryptocurrency, but it has no backing from any central bank. So it is always in the free flow of market forces. But if enough people are using it, if it's broad enough, it can reach some stability. Yeah, and it's not controlled by anybody. And suddenly we realize that is actually quite cool benefit. All the other currencies are in reality not currencies. They all have different purposes. I mean, if you take Ethereum, the next big one, Ethereum in itself, the Ether is not a currency. Ethereum is a multi-purpose blockchain that most apps and businesses are using, and the tokens are a kind of license model and for paying for these blockchains. And therefore, I think that's what their focus was. They are not meant as a currency. And then if you look at the myriad others, everything has its own little purpose, but Bitcoin is a pure play one. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I mean, that's where it started.
Makes it so unique.
Absolutely. So rightly said, and frankly, it all goes back to Bitcoin no matter how we look at it, because essentially, it's interesting. The original Satoshi paper did not even mention the word blockchain, but the idea was just so brilliant and resonated so well off that page. It was taken and transformed into something that could basically change paradigms around the world. So before we wrap up, there's 3 questions I ask everybody, and just to make you think. And the first one is, if you had one wish for something you can change in your business or the industry as a whole, what would it be?
Still, that people would be more open in the adoption of the whole topic. There is still skepticism there, and there is still a lot of misunderstanding, and people should more aggressively simply inform themselves about the whole sector, about blockchain and cryptocurrencies and such.
Excellent. It's interesting because I find it to be mind-bending for some people to wrap their heads around the entire concept. It's no matter how many times you have this conversation, the analogy, it's difficult. The second question. What has been the biggest challenge in your company to where it is today?
The biggest challenge at the moment is, first on the market, is for companies getting funding, getting money. It's the biggest challenge. Technology is there. Awareness of companies is there. Now suddenly capital is constrained. And so the biggest challenge actually is, in fact, at the moment, the COVID challenge, that everybody is taking a backseat a little bit, and finding money for companies is a truffle hunt where there are still people spending money, family offices, ultra-high net worth individuals. But honestly, I think some of the more institutional investors taking a bigger backstands than they should do. And that is a hindrance that makes our business more difficult. But we actually work quite very well in this because we are very good with these family offices. But other than that, that's a hindrance, very clear. So the current crisis is putting like a lid on many of the ambitions of the companies, and that, of course, is for our business then makes it also a little bit more difficult.
Last question is, what excites you the most about what it is you're working on and keeps you getting out of bed every morning to fight the good fight?
What always excites me is, again, to work with entrepreneurs and to see their businesses developing and to see when they have success and to help them to grow it further. It's very stimulating. And it's also very stimulating every day to be challenged by new business proposals and new business ideas where you need to wrap your head around, even if you think you have a lot of experience, but they all come with new ideas. So this constant stimulation and working with entrepreneurs and seeing their success and be a part of it is just very motivating.
Excellent. Well, I don't blame you. You are on the frontier of something that is emerging and going to change the way we do almost everything. So thank you very much for taking this time to speak about it. And I appreciate everything you've had to say, and hopefully everybody finds it just as enlightening. And best of luck.
Thank you very much, Jason, and stay healthy in this environment.
So that was my interview with Heinrich Zetlmayer. I hope you enjoyed that. And I hope you found the number of applications that are being found for the use of blockchain enlightening. As I said before, it is hard to underestimate just how much this is going to change the way business works in the background. As always, if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever it is you get your podcasts. Until next time, take care.
This podcast was brought to you by Woodgate Financial, an award-winning financial planning firm catering to high net worth individuals and their families. To learn more, go to woodgate.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play, or find more episodes at jasonpereira.ca.